Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Google Pixel 8a, Google's latest affordable and budget-friendly smartphone that undercuts others and cuts above others too. By now it's pretty clear what Google tends to do year over year. So in this case we have the Pixel 8 phones that launched in the fall of 2023 and then follow up with the Pixel 8a in the spring of 2024. So some of what we saw in those phones has now been trickled down to this one. That includes Google's Tensor G3 chipset and even a few other features as well on the AI side in particular. I'll start with the design because for the most part, this phone is very similar to the previous 7a, but there are a couple of key differences, including the rounded corners. This is not as rectangular a phone as the previous one was. And also the back is of a matte surface. It is not the glossy surface that we saw in the previous Model 2. I much prefer this. It's not a fingerprint magnet the same way that the glossy surface was. And honestly, I just feel like it pops a little differently. So, just a personal preference, but it's a nice look. While this is not a premium phone, it feels like it has something to it. Even when you hold it, it just doesn't feel like it's cheap, even though it may not have the same exact materials that more expensive phones do. Off the bat, I'll tell you, it's the same screen size. It's a 6.1-inch OLED display. It's really the same panel, actually, that was used in the previous model. The internals are largely similar too. Yes, the G3 is a different chipset, but it's still 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. There is a 256 gig variant that only comes in black, but other than that, the internals largely kind of stay the same and even feel the same despite the different chipsets. So nothing really huge changes there. A couple things though that I do like that Google added. One is an adaptive refresh rate that now ups things to 120 Hertz. Previously it was 90 Hertz. In this case now it goes up to 120. It is off by default though. You got to go into settings in the display and turn on smooth display. What happens here is that it'll make it an adaptive refresh rate where if you're looking at something that's static, like you're reading something, it will stick to 60 Hertz, but if you're playing games or watching video or something like that, it will then raise it automatically to 120. It is not something that you can change manually. It will do it for you like other phones tend to do. In some cases, obviously flagship phones will do it from as low as 10 Hertz all the way to 120. But here it's 60 to 120, and frankly, I prefer it. I think it just feels just a little bit smoother than it was before. Normally I talk about battery life later on, but that's also a bit of a change here too. It's a modest change. The battery here is only modestly larger than it was in the previous 7a, but here it actually lasts 1 hour longer on average than that phone did. So there's some efficiencies here and optimizations that actually make the software work better and make the phone last longer per day. The battery life is not amazing, relatively speaking, but you get through a day pretty easily. And I know I did when I tested it out, and I think you will as well. There's nothing particularly special about how the phone works. It just works. I can't put it any simpler than that. That's really what I think Google's Pixel A series has been known for. I've tested so many of them. Actually, I've tested them from the very beginning, and that's really what they've been about. It's really been about just efficiency, just making the phone work. You're not looking for all the frills, you're not looking for all the bells and whistles, you just want a phone that works, and this one really feels like it does. Whether you're watching something, you're scrolling, you're just browsing, social media, messaging, phone calls, all that stuff works pretty smoothly, and some of the features that you see in other Pixel phones do apply here. So call screen, hold my call, things like that will work on here for phone calls without a problem. And the AI features now extend further to Gemini. So if you don't know, Gemini is Google's answer to OpenAI's ChatGPT. So it is a language learning model that basically is supposed to help either tell you things that you want to know, or help you understand or learn about things, or even control certain features on your device. Bear in mind now that this is something that works for free. So there's a free app, you download it from Google Play, and it's not pre-installed on the phone, you got to go get it. And there's a free version that can do a lot of these things, but it's not going to be as good as the advanced version that can tap into apps like Gmail and Docs, and is considerably smarter, at least from what Google says, to what the free version is. You can try it for 2 months. You can try Gemini Advanced for 2 months, but then it's $27 Canadian per month after that as part of your Google One package. So just keep that in mind, depending on how far you want to go with this. But it is pretty cool. I tried it out for a number of things. You can choose to use it instead of Google Assistant, so it can be your go-to voice assistant instead of Google. Personally, I ended up going back to Google Assistant because there are certain things that Gemini cannot do. For one, it cannot control music, so I cannot tell it to play, let's say, a certain song or playlist from Spotify. It couldn't do that. And it has no real integration with Google Photos as well. It will tell you what you can do in Google Photos to perform a function, but it can't really tap into those photos in any way. So it just feels like it's just missing a couple things. Now, you can use both. So you can have Google Assistant working as normal, and then you can have Gemini working as well. The only difference in that scenario is that you would have to have, you just use Gemini within the app itself, as opposed to functioning in the broader system of Android as well. Naturally, for any Pixel phone, the camera is going to come up as a feature to talk about. What tends to happen, I find, with Pixel A phones is that there will be a leap or a jump forward one year to another at certain points, and then it kind of just steadies from there. And that's what's happened here. So if you compare the Pixel 6a and the Pixel 7a, you'll see that there was a big difference because Google put different hardware in the camera. There's different lenses, different image sensors. So it obviously, with the software that Google has, just created much better photos when it came to the 7a's performance. What's happened here is that Google has kind of just basically run it back again. So what you had in the 7a is right here as well. Same image sensors, same lenses, same everything. Nothing has really changed, and I would argue that even photo output hasn't really changed all that much either. So the image quality that you got in the 7a, you can expect more or less the same thing here. There might be a tweak as far as Google's computation software doing a little bit better when it comes to rendering an image, but honestly, I didn't see any major differences in that regard. If anything, it was really, really minor and probably negligible to most people's eyes. That's not necessarily a bad thing in that at least you know you're getting a competent and very capable camera, especially relative to the price. So the images that you can shoot on this are going to be varied, and they will come out looking pretty good under varying circumstances. So nothing changes there. Video is kind of the same situation as well. It's not really any different, in my opinion, compared to the Pixel 7a. So for the most part, really, we have a status quo situation. Now, when it comes to the AI features that are related to photos and the camera, that also is a carryover from what we saw with the Pixel 8 flagships. In this case now, you can access a photo from Google Photos and then apply certain AI-based editing features. So we all know about Magic Eraser and unblur and things like that. All that's in here, okay? So all the editing features that you pretty much would see in those flagship models are going to be here. Magic Editor is another addition. This is the first A series phone that I've seen that has Magic Editor. And so in this case, you can remove objects or people from a photo. You can change the sky in a photo that has a sky in it. You can also stylize a photo. The difference here is that you can't do all of these things with every image. What happens is the AI is reading the image and basically determining, okay, here's what we can offer and what you can do. So for example, if there's no sky, that sky feature is not going to apply. The stylized one is interesting because it doesn't apply to every image either, which I think is kind of unusual. I would have thought that that'd be there regardless, so that you can just stylize any photo. There were even photos that I took of architecture that it just never popped up, and I'm not sure why. But when it does, it offers you some interesting options. You can scroll through and save as copies as well. One thing I think is interesting also is that Google is going to continue to support the Pixel 8a for 7 years of Android and security updates. This is significant because this is the first time Google has ever done anything like that for an A series phone. Previously, it was 4 years. Now it's 7, matching what it offers for the other Pixel 8 phones. So if you take care of this, and assuming that Google optimizes the software for the aging hardware down the line, this phone could technically still work up to 2030 or 2031. Kind of crazy to think about, but that's what they're claiming. Wireless charging, I should note also, there gets a slight boost. It was 5 watts in the 7a. It is 7.5 watts in the 8a. Not terribly fast, but it is still a convenient way to charge the phone. And that's my review of the Google Pixel 8a. You can read more about it by just clicking that link below. For the Best Buy blog, I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.